yes, thank you, Lucia. So what I wanted to start with is now the presentation of Rafael and why we are gathered here together. It's thanks to Valentina, who invited Rafael, who is also coming from the University of Granada, and who is actually coming from the field of public international law. And you did your degree in Granada, but also passed through the College of Europe, Bruges, which is also interesting because I know that Center for Excellency from Advanced Studies or Excellency from Bruges is one of our references in creating the program at the beginning. And so you are publishing articles in all reviews dealing with European Union law, and it's very interesting to hear you now on those issues that are urgent. So Rafael, please.
Well, thank you very much, Sania, for your presentation. Thank you to the audience. I'm very pleased to be here with young researchers from a variety of points of view. Thanks to Valentina also, who gave me the idea to participate. So I will talk during 25-30 minutes, and then I will listen to you, to your comments, to your views. You belong, well, you are now in the youngest member state of the European Union. You adhered in 2013, so your view from the European Union integration process will be very, well, very interesting to me. And I will try to make an overview of the current challenges in this complex moment we are facing for the European Union for the European integration process. The title of the talk is Existential Challenges and Threats for the European Union in a post-Brexit, post-Trump, and hopefully post-COVID world. We are dealing with this deep change in our lives, and well, you know probably that European Union is an international organization composed of 27 after the withdrawal of United Kingdom, which is well a great power and member state powerful in the economy and the army and the intelligence and security field is diplomacy is a great power that will be linked to the European Union in any way, but that has well abandoned the process. Maybe United Kingdom never was really interested in strengthening the European Union, but well, it's a loss. Crises are the detonator, the accelerator of the European integration in history. So we celebrated last year 70th anniversary from the starting of the Schuman Declaration, which was the starting point for the coal and steel community, the French and German sectors that were put together, the first European community. European Union has been said to be the best political invention of the 20th century. We are still waiting to see if it will overcome and to which to withstand the 21st century. European Union is always lacking a new treaty. Nowadays, we are witnessing the launch of a conference on the future of Europe, with three institutions: the European Commission, European Parliament, Council of the Union, debating about how to reform the Lisbon Treaty, which was the last reform of the founding treaties of the European Union. It entered into force in 2009, and since then we have suffered several crises: the financial and debt crisis in the Eurozone, in the south of the Eurozone, in Greece, in Italy, in Spain, Portugal. Well, with asymmetric effects, and the refugee crisis and after the Libyan and Syrian wars, Brexit in 2016, the Trump administration also simultaneously, which was a damage to the international liberal order. The European Union is a product of this international liberal order, started after the Second World War. And well, the future of the international liberal order is telling us about the health of the strength of the European Union integration process in the future. Nowadays, we face also the rise of China, and the rise of China could be an external federator to federate the integration process. Could be, I don't know, but we have reasons to think that for the European continent will be better to engage, to associate economic integration, and also, as we will see in security and defense matters, to be autonomous. Well, this concatenation of calamities brings us to the pandemic, and well, as I said, Croatia is the youngest member state of the Union. The Schengen area, which was an economic and human attractive of European integration, now has lost a bit of its sense. Free movement of people, which is one of the core principles of European Union, now is facing hard restrictions, and even among member states. Sanitary question is required to have prior test to enter in some member states. So even inside the member states, free movement is seriously damaged. Well, I will try to talk about 4 points, as I said. Strategic autonomy of the European Union will be the first question. The second, the relationship between China and the European Union, which is the most strategically important, I think, now. The third point is a question of illiberal democracies and populisms, and left and right populisms, nationalism, arising in member states, the question of the rule of law, because rule of law, the European Union is an international organization founded in law, and the rule of law, the liberal democracy is a footprint, is the landmark, is a founding value of the European integration process. And the fourth question is the economic recovery, the plans of recovery that the European Union has put or will put into action in the next years. So the first question about strategic autonomy. You probably know that most of member states of the European Union are at the same time members of NATO, of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and security and defense matters, operation in fields of intelligence depends on the United States and also on the UK. And the European Union has been facing a debate over several decades to strengthen its common and foreign security and defense policy, to have an autonomous common and security defense policy, especially since 2017, after Brexit and the arrival of Donald Trump to the United States administration. The European Union has strengthened the enhanced cooperation in this field. But at the same time, the reality is that the dependence on the United States is high, and these two international organizations, NATO and European Union, should coexist for the moment. So the strategic autonomy will depend in the new context on factors such as the digital sovereignty, 5G infrastructures, access to critical raw materials, which also oblige to reduce the dependence from China and the rare earth, minerals, and so on. Well, even there is a division among member states. France, Macron, president, for instance, prefers to look for the strategic autonomy, but Germany, Angela Merkel, is not on the same view, on the same line. Well, it's a difficult question because there is a dilemma after the Joe Biden arrival to the White House, and in the European Union there was a euphorical view, and the dilemma is that strengthening the transatlantic ties could be at the expense of this strategic autonomy. This is one of the dilemmas. Well, at the same time, the relationship with China is the most strategically important and challenging for the European Union, as the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said. And with China, and last December, the European Union reached a principle of agreement in foreign investment, direct foreign investment. The question is that China is a systemic rival to the European Union and to the United States in the economic field and technological fields, but the play level is not the play field, sorry, is not level, because China has not granted market access to European companies. China does not allow European companies to participate in regulated sectors. China practices sort of state capitalism, which distorts free competition. And well, the Chinese investment in Europe is growing faster since 2016, especially, and at the same time, European investment in China is decreasing, the growing of. So this sort of agreement in principle, in the context of after the trade war among United States and China, wants to rebalance the trade and investment relationship with China of the European Union. The European Union fears that Chinese investment could be harmful for national security of the member states, because sometimes this investment will be used to divide member states or to influence, for instance, Serbia is a candidate country to the European Union accession, and Serbia is praising Chinese government for making investments at the spite of European Union, criticizing European Union for its bureaucratic nature, the burdens, and so on. So the fear is that Chinese influence in European countries will be at the expense of respecting, for instance, the law, public procurement law, and the equity of public procurement procedures. So there is a fear about this. Probably you have heard about the project of China, One Belt, One Road initiative. Well, this project is also connected to the idea to lead artificial intelligence in future. China wants to be in the next years the leader in artificial intelligence, and Chinese market will be probably the scenario where the digital markets of the world will be shaped and inspired. So there can be clashes with the values and interests of the European Union. The European Union has an advanced regulation on data protection. Well, for instance, in Croatia, I read, I don't know if it's true, that Chinese companies are investing in the Rijeka port and building the Rijeka-Karlovac railway. I read, but I don't know to what extent is going on this. And Pelsejac Bridge. Sometimes these investments could clash with European funds to this infrastructure. So this is the fear that the European Union has, at the same time that is negotiating and adopting this agreement on investment. And at the same time, European Union wants to monitor these foreign investments in the member states to avoid that national security can be compromised. On the grounds of values and fundamental rights, there are great problems because the European Union wants to be in the global order a normative power to enhance human rights protection. And for instance, in Hong Kong, the administrative special region of China defends, even the arbitrary detention or the limits to freedom of expression, political participation. China is not, continental China is not wanted to allow sort of liberal democracy in Hong Kong. So here the European Parliament could put difficulties for this investment agreement to enter into force. The last word for the agreement on investment with China will be of the European Parliament, and human rights questions, human rights violations, for instance, in the Xinjiang, among the Uyghur population, could be used as an argument to vote against this agreement. As I said, in foreign relations, in this geopolitical complex moment, the European Union wants to present herself as a global promoter of fundamental rights, human dignity, democracy, international law. Well, the third question is linked to what I called left and right populisms, national populisms. Well, we are facing a crisis of liberal democracies, and in Western Europe as well. And Italy, for instance, changed recently the government. Estonia, other governments are weaker, and we are witnessing some populisms all across Europe that are not very convinced about the European Union integration process. So in the economic recovery plans of the European Union, the EU Generation Next and the post-pandemic recovery plan, was linked to the respect of the rule of law. In the European Union, we have habitual suspects. We can say Poland and Hungary, for instance, that have been prosecuted by the European Commission, which opened infringement procedures, bring them to the European Court of Justice for not respecting the independence of the judiciary, which is a core principle of the rule of law. In the negotiations of the current budget for 7 years period, the European Union has a multi-annual financial framework for the period of 2021 to 2027. Well, the link with the rule of law has been put on the table because it is an essential requirement to perceive funding from the European budget to respect European values, rule of law, liberal democracy. So the European Union cannot expose, for instance, a member state. Once a member state is inside the European Union, cannot be thrown out of the international organization, even if it does not respect the funding values. There is a monitoring prior to accession and also after the accession, but once Hungary or Poland or other member states, Bulgaria or Romania, are inside, or Italy or Spain are inside the international organization, if they fail to respect the course of liberal democracy or the rule of law, they cannot be thrown out of the international organization. So, as I said before, one of the pillars of strategic autonomy and the foreign relations of the European Union is to become a global normative power. But if the European Union allows its member states to damage the foundations of liberal democracy and the rule of law, this legitimacy to carry out an external policy aimed at promoting these values will suffer, will lose credit. And also the European Union in foreign relations practices sanctions to third states which violate human rights. For instance, to Russia after the stabilization of Ukraine, Nicaragua, Venezuela. Now we have in Burma, Myanmar, the coup d'etat. Well, if the European Union is too lenient with its own member states, then the legitimacy to adopt external sanctions will suffer. But at the same time, if the European Union practices an internal conditionality that is too strong about with Poland and Hungary or Malta or Cyprus, these member states can be tempted to be closer to Russia, for instance. So it's a two-sword dilemma. So for the adoption of this multi-annual framework, the negotiations were held at the European Council because Poland and Hungary, only two member states, could block the adoption of the budget for 7 years. And finally, the requirements of rule of law conditionality were softened to reach this agreement. So it's a carrot versus stick debate again. Well, the fourth point is the economic recovery plan for Europe. The so-called European Recovery and Resilience and the Next Generation EU. Well, both multi-annual financial framework and the Next Generation EU suppose 1.8 trillion euro to rebuild this post-COVID Europe. And the Next Generation EU, 500 billion are grants and 2,050 billions are loans to member states. For instance, I think Croatia will receive, I don't remember exactly, but small piece of this. You know? Also with the earthquakes that you suffered recently in December, the European Solidarity Fund will help to some extent. The two main aspects of this recovery plan are the Green Deal and the digital economy. The transition to a climate neutral economy in 2050. The European Union, as a normative power, has in this field also the most ambitious global objectives compared to other actors. Even the EU Commissioner, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said that we need to make a cultural change of this. The circular economy is a new culture. The sustainability, the European Union has I don't remember the word, has launched public debt, green bonds. The European Commission, for the first time, will, because in the last financial crisis, we saw that the public debt of member states had to be supported only on its own. The European Central Bank could buy assets and public debt in the secondary markets, but not a joint emission. Now, for the first time, we are witnessing green bonds of the European Commission and of the European Central Bank is making a parallelism with the United States funding moment. The public debt was yes, a crucial point to federate the new state, but European integration is not does not have a clear goal towards political integration, but this is an important step, especially in the Eurozone. European integration is a different speed because the Eurozone, of course, has a stronger degree of integration, of economic and political integration. Well, in I don't know if Croatia or other member states would be ready, according to the standards set by the Council of the European Union, one day to enter in the euro. I don't know if for national economy would be a good or bad decision, but it is possible that one day happen. Yeah. Well, all public policies of the European Union will be linked to these two pillars: green economy and digital cohesion, common agricultural policy. This is said to be the largest stimulus package ever. Well, it's a dangerous moment, as I said, because of the national democratic processes in this complex situation. But the European Union will make this effort. It depends also on the national plans for resilience that the member states have to adopt. And that could be in the next years conflicts among member states, for instance, among the Hanseatic League in the southern states because of the national plans of spending. At the moment, there is a consensus on making heterodox, non-orthodox economic measures and soften the requirements for state aid. There is a greater will to allow public intervention in the markets, but this cannot probably last forever. So, well, the European Union is also looking for new own resources to finance its budget. The digital tax, but it depends also on to the great players on the internet. It depends also on the position of the United States and other developed states. A carbon border adjustment mechanism, new sources of financial assets will be proposed in the next years by the European Commission. Well, in conclusion, to make some final remarks of this presentation, European Union and its member states need to look for strategic autonomy, to adopt the adequate geo-economic position in this context of, to some extent, demondialization that the COVID has carried. Member states I hope we'll discover that the best sort of protectionism is to engage in economic association with the rest of the old continent and not protectionism. European Union will try to lead at global level decarbonization, fair transition to a green economy, the revitalization of the multilateral institutions, circular economy, and the normative values, international law, human rights. So to survive, to have coherence, the European Union should start being committed to its own foundational values, which is seriously compromised nowadays. European Union citizenship, free movement of people, and fundamental rights, the rule of law in its own house among its member states first. So these are several ideas, general, and I'm now waiting for your questions and comments and your opinions about these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafael. So it's only Valentina and you that are legal scholars, and you know this is also the particular exercise that we are dealing with here, because whatever we have to say is coming from elsewhere, not from the language that you use and how you use. And whenever you go on with the strategic autonomy, well, behind it's a huge load of problems before we come to the normative level of execution. So I may start because okay, I'm a moderator, but this is also the most provocative thing with any legal system, how it's executed and how it functions. And in the case of Europe and European Union, this dinosaur, it's unfortunately it became a dinosaur in less than 100 years. But speaking about the administration and the structure in normative layers of the European Union, it's a dinosaur. And how we are going to survive, because as I know, all of us, we are pretty much cosmopolitan. And for me, being European is firstly a cosmopolitan idea of not belonging to any particular nation, state, whatsoever. You see, so how to overcome this problem? We can discuss China, EU, NATO, Frontex, Mediterranean, Baltic, all these area studies, elements that are influencing the common living of the people. Can you translate us this? How something legal can also be efficient in terms of getting people living better?
Wow.
I know. I know that it's so important and it's so difficult. It's impossible to resolve it, but you might have a hint.
Well, as you said, the cosmopolitan idea reflects what the European Union should be. Civil servants of member states are also European Union civil servants, and judges, public administrations, universities, but sometimes we are not able to have this identity, or to bear in mind that we belong to the European Union as a whole. And well, the legal infrastructure to make a better life for people is also a problem of national states. The states are dinosaurs as well, even more than the European Union. And this is well, a serious problem, because justice, for instance, the administration of justice is, if judicial process take 5 or 6 years of the life of one person, they are not worthy to be carried out. So, but this is not a problem of the European Union. The European Union is original because it depends on the civil servants, of the infrastructures of member states. Decentralization is the feature of the main feature of this machine. Well, it's a difficult question, George, about all the legal systems. But yeah, it's interesting as well. I wonder how sometimes how legal questions do not facilitate our lives. That they are because we are great groups of human beings cooperating and having also conflicts among us. So we need legal systems for great populations. So, but yeah, the machinery is not as efficient or as smart as we will wish, no, to be.
But then, Rafael, we the people, I mean, we the people, not myself or you, or we are that machinery. We are there. And then when you have something that is not functioning, and that you are trying to put on some patches, like, okay, let's do it this way, let's do it that way, but from the beginning, and also the purpose of this liberal democracy, you said it's a founding value of the liberal democracy, that is the rule of law, and the tension that exists between this national law and the international law is not resolved within the legal studies. No. And then you put on the plate European studies, and you try to impose that artificially. It doesn't function. It just makes more scars, and the consequences are just too much complicated. I lived in the United Kingdom 15 years ago and worked there for a good less than a decade. And what I experienced was like, it was in Scotland, so it's a also particular thing. And what we did was like forcing European studies on any level. European studies, legal studies, culture studies, philosophy, whatsoever, all the time, European studies. And we were motivating students to go on and study in the field of European discipline, whatever discipline they're having, anthropology, sociology, but European studies. these people are now in their years when they can advance. They have their PhDs, they have a lot of things to do and to say about European studies. They're not accountable. You see, either they're in the system, so already privileged by very good statuses within the European Commission. We know that this is like protected species. I've been offered a job in Luxembourg, and I know things from within. But I didn't accept the fact that I need to be in my office from the morning until the late day and stay in one place. And I wanted the freedom. That was my personal choice. And I came to Croatia. So and I'm not using the word corruption, but what I wanted to say is that it's a European Union is a dinosaur surviving only for those who are privileged, who are already in the system. And they are making what is their fault? It's just that they're making too much. They're making compromises all the way along with Poland, with Hungary, with all the waves that you have of populism from within. In Germany, in Italy, in Belgium, or from elsewhere. So tell me, from the legal perspective, you're a public international law expert, tell me how you, as a legal scholar, envisage patching this terrible lack of trust, agency, and accountability within the European Commission and European Union system.
Well, I don't know the answer, but probably your perception is adequate. But I'm not also sharing all your views, but they can be also have on a national administration and national governments or national. This loss of trust is not exclusive of the European Union institutions. Also, the degree of trust in national institutions is very poor, and this is the problems which affect our existence are for the European Union very far, but also for national governments or national or local administration are not at.
For me, whenever you say national, when I pronounce national interest, I find it in contradiction with the European interest. But and I'm provocative on the. It's a provocation, and I know that it's a provocation.
Yeah.
But I think that the very example of what I said is this farce with the vaccine thing. Can you trace me legal thread of how Europe wanted to protect its market, taking into account what happened in UK with frantic Boris Johnson, and also from China, because we are having all this on the plate, and Russia. They are very now they're so like honest, saying, "Oh, Russian vaccine is also functional. It's very good." I know because I follow what is happening in France. France is like nowhere. France and Institut Pasteur is like non-existing, like the leading institution to get the vaccine, to be in the top of the top all the time. They do not exist. But then when they have an opportunity to speak about European values, etc., protect it from Russia, from China, etc., they do it. So it's just a cheap politics and not really anything that is behind to provide this Europeanness.
Yeah, I agree with the vaccination problem. I see as a geopolitical change of propaganda mainly, and well, the European Union has a weakness because the industrial production is not located in a European territory. I don't know the legal aspects. I only know that the European Commission is trying to block re-exporting of vaccines, and the Russian vaccine has not been submitted to the agency, the European agency for the moment, but Hungary, the European Commission allows that in some member states can be used. Hungary has bought several units, so Russia is willing to provide, but I don't know very much about this question, but I think it's a geopolitical.
It's a ultra liberal capitalism there, and it's the capitalism in its most wild stage. And what is the response? What is the legal response? How you are going normatively, how you are going to put the end to this total deregulation in economic terms? How you are going to put it again, or try to like?
Well, I don't know the legal response, but it's not only a question of ultra capitalism, but because Russia or China or other powerful states are providing its own vaccine, as it's a deregulated world, but not always of ultra or deregulated.
Well, it is. If you ask me, and we are now here among ourselves, if you ask me, the wild capitalism in China or in Russia is like cool. It's worse.
Yes, it's a but it's a state-led capitalism. So it's a difficult question, George, because there are the European Union has rules of competition, but the oligopoly, well, the big technologies, also the big are not. The European Commission cannot deter or cannot sanction, condition the behavior of these industries. This is yeah, the answer, but
thank you. I didn't want to be tough, but then please.
this
you can have more decent questions, because all my questions are really
No,
indecent.
I am grateful for your questions, because yeah, these are difficulties we are facing, and I don't have the answer for them. So
Kevin, you have something to say.
Yeah, just a quick question in regard to this kind of right populism that we were discussing. So a few years ago, I attended a conference. It was actually an Austrian studies conference, but in general, we were talking about European issues. And we were discussing the rise of right populism, and specifically this kind of discourse in Hungary, though it's not limited to Hungary. Obviously, it came up in the UK and Croatia and elsewhere, of saying we're no longer a sovereign country. And you hear this a lot. And of course, there were liberals in the audience who said, oh, that's so ridiculous, etc. However, we had a very distinguished guest with us that evening, and a great legal mind. It was Wolfgang Petrich, who was, of course, the former High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and very involved in Austria's ascension to the EU, etc. And he pointed out, they're absolutely right. They're not a sovereign country anymore. This is what a treaty is. It's sacrificing a degree of sovereignty in exchange for a contractual relationship. And I was wondering, in terms of right populism and also left populism that takes issue with a lot of questions of sovereignty and EU centralization and so forth, is it to the benefit of the EU to continually kind of deny that these countries are no longer sovereign? Like, can we accept that they are not sovereign nation states anymore? And maybe that's okay. Thank you.
well, thank you for your question. I think there are sovereign countries, because that sovereignty is not like in the 16th century or 18th century. We live in an interdependent world, and the state accepts the treaty, the compromises, due to its consent, to its will. The will can be more or less free or conditioned by the circumstances, but once the member state accepts this treaty, it remains with sovereignty, equal sovereignty. All member states of the Union are equally sovereignty. Other question is that they are not equally powerful, but this sovereignty is respected by the European Union, national identity, and some competences are attributed to European institutions and other not. The European Union building depends on national powers to execute the compromises previously accepted. European Union member states accept rules of procedure to adopt common decisions that can be binding, even if you vote against. For instance, when the Council of the European Union decided to relocate asylum seekers or refugees from Greece and Italy to other member states, Hungary reacted, making a referendum and closing borders against the decisions that the state had accepted in the Treaty of the European Union, where there is an article that provides for this procedure and on this matter allows the Council of the European Union to adopt a binding decision. Hungary was not the only state that did not accomplish with this decision. For instance, Spain did not respect the common decision as well, even if Hungary is the habitual suspect, I say. But of course, sovereignty remains, but it's not an absolute view. The own acts of the state to accept international obligations emanate from sovereign power, but sovereign power is limited. It has to be in accordance with international law, not absolute. Not states are not middle-aged kingdoms, so I don't know what else to. But it's true that power is a difficult question for international law today, because international companies or private actors can be really more powerful than the biggest coalition of states, and we do not have legal instruments to make these savage powers to behave in according to international law. That's the truth. Even the most powerful state, except I think the government of China that controls also. I think all companies, and Russian government is also powerful, but I don't know. The United States is a state based on freedom, and even if there are ties among companies and the government, and companies can be more powerful. I think that the government. I don't know. This is a doubt I put. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go.
Tanya, yes.
Thanks, Rafael. And I think this idea that companies can be more powerful.
So, I'm sorry, I don't know. Now, I listen you very low.
Again?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rafael. This idea that sort of companies can be more powerful than. Am I quiet again, Kevin? Oh, let me check my setting. Sorry.
We hear you now. Go on. Just go on.
So I think this idea that companies can be more powerful than nations can be actually this line of questioning that Sonia brought up of how it's actually like nations and even the supranational association cannot or does not seem to have the framework to control something that's beyond a question of the state. And so I think this is the problem that we're facing today in these crises of capitalism. And whether the EU or any country will be able to deal with it is big and hurting all of us in many ways. But my question is a little bit more specific and about the European Green Deal. So the European Green Deal actually started before the pandemic and was sort of announced in 2019. I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about how it may have changed because of the pandemic and how it has been shaped by it.
Well, thank you, Tanya, for the question. I don't really know. I'm not an expert on the Green Deal, but I think now the discussion are 30 objectives of cutting emissions There is the European Parliament is more ambitious. Wants I don't know if it's a 60% reduction, and the governments want a 55%. They are reaching an agreement. Well, I don't know really the effects of the pandemic in the objectives or in the Green Deal. Well, the European Union has put in say market on emissions, trade on, but my personal point of view is not very optimistic about this mechanism, because of the previous Kyoto Protocol, which had a lot of flexibility mechanisms that at the end can allow to member states and to companies to avoid the reductions. I don't know if I have answered to your question. I don't know very much about the Green Deal, and I see also is to some extent propaganda but of course it will bring a real change and funding of the European Union, and the economy will have a real transformation over the next decade. I don't know, but for instance, the pandemic in the air transport has shown a reduction of flights and emissions. I don't know very much about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
More questions?
You see that we are very tough.
Yes, but I'm grateful because you make me start thinking more deeply, because I'm not used to see the out of the legal reasoning. Well, I of course I see the questions surrounding legal aspects, but not normally we don't have such kind of questions, and especially the point of view of your position is interesting for me. So I don't know if there is another question or other remark. I'm grateful to meet you all and to have this exchange, so we can be in contact afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry, and it might again be one of these things.
Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. Go on.
Sorry, in the sense that it might be one of those things that from a legal perspective, it doesn't necessarily have an answer, but just your opinion would be very interesting in terms of this. So you talked a little bit about this competition with sort of global giants within the EU sphere, so China and Russia, as well as the EU itself, and internal sort of EU skepticism. So I'm coming from the perspective of the Western Balkans and this prolonged accession that's happening. And so within the EU, there's this push, especially from Macron, to know we need to work on integration and Europeanization first of the existing member states. Mm-hmm. And we should put off any new accessions. But this question of legitimacy and this normative framework and this promissory legitimacy is sort of what interests me with putting off further accession in the Balkans and other aspiring aspiring candidates or current candidates. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about this aspect.
Exactly, which is your question? Sorry.
What are your thoughts on further integration and Europeanization, potentially at the risk of alienating candidates or prioritizing candidates without integration first?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the debate that has been taken for decades. So the European Union is always divided on an enlargement or deepening the integration. I think they are not opposed, but the last enlargement after 2004 has changed the European Union, and the European Union was not ready, maybe because there was well a huge entry of new states, but it can be said that United Kingdom was in favor of enlargement to destroy maybe the European Union as it existed. But on the other hand, it's dangerous to forget Western Balkan candidates and to not give hope to them to be too fanatical. I don't know the word. Yes. Turkey, for instance, never wanted to really enter in the European Union, but the negotiation of the enlargement has been blocked by questions such as the independence of the judiciary, the rule of law, the liberal democracy aspects. It's dangerous to be too hard with Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, because if the European Union is not attractive to them, of course, China and Russia and Turkey are pushing for this region, and the goals, the objectives, the normative foundations are not the same. I think European Union, of course, there are interests of companies and governments, but at least it tries to have a transparent or to have public procurement rules. But other governments or companies are directly bribing, I will say, the governments. So it's at the same time, labor markets are not as because one of the premises of the European Union in liberal economic thought is that labor markets will allow to make a balancing among most developed countries and less developed countries of the European economic integration area will improve the level of life if workers can be moving freely, where they are. But I think this is failing a bit in the European Union, especially after the pandemic, but before as well, after the last enlargements. Yeah, this is the question, the prohibition of discrimination on grounds of nationality and free movement in the labor markets, but I think it's a complex situation. Also, United Kingdom is outside of the European Union is trying to be more selective, not a different perspective of what is going on in the European Union. So it's difficult to block this enlargement for this reason, but at the same time, for the European Union, it's difficult to incorporate new member states fast. More questions?
No, I think we were hard enough.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry because my English, I'm not very used to
no
an English speaker, but I'm
No
sorry
problem.
if I was too slow sometimes or not very clear. Okay. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you very much, Rafael. And you do thank Valentina for inviting you on our behalf. And so this will be the end of today's seminar. You will get the recording from Lucia, and I wish you all the very best, and see you soon.
Thank you very much, and the best for all of you. Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.